Welcome to the Corporate Detox podcast. I'm your host, Amanda McWhorter. I'm a corporate dropout, recovering people pleaser and perfectionist turned burnout recovery coach. If you are sick of the corporate roller coaster ride and ready to step into a life you love, this is the podcast for you. Hey there, welcome back to the Corporate Detox podcast. I'm your host, Amanda McWhorter. And today's episode is so important. And this is an episode that I truly wish that I had when I was in the thick of my burnout. When you looked at the title of this episode, you're probably like, what in the heck? This episode is all about how you're not lazy, you're just burnout. So I want you to keep in mind that when someone is in burnout, their symptoms are going to be different from the person next to them that might be burnout as well. That's one of the hard things about burnout and why in the medical community, people aren't necessarily diagnosed with burnout. There's not a whole lot of talk about being burnt out, right? Because the symptoms vary by person. So it's not like someone can look at you and just say, oh, you're exuding all of the symptoms of being burnt out. Because how burnout shows up in my life is going to be completely different in how it shows up in your life. I remember being so exhausted that truly I had to take a nap during the day because I just couldn't physically get to the evening and be able to function. The day that I found out that all of my feelings, right, on why was I being so lazy anymore? Why couldn't I get through an entire day? Why did it hurt so bad? And it was so exhausting for me to even try to walk a quarter of a mile. I can remember exactly where I was standing in my house when I found out some of the reasons why I was so exhausted. So for me, part of my burnout recovery journey was when I enlisted some help. And in the beginning, right out of the gate, I didn't know that I was burnt out when I quit my corporate job. I knew that things were off. I knew that I was miserable. I didn't want to live that life anymore, but I didn't realize how burnt out I was. And then after being removed from the corporate world, that's when the exhaustion really, really hit me. So much like anyone else, I didn't know much about burnout. And, I don't come from an area where it's widely talked about. I came from retail in my corporate life, and we didn't talk about burnout at that point. So we're talking late 2020 when all this is happening. So in the winter of 2021, I made the decision to start looking for some help and who could help me on my journey. And one of the people that I came in contact with, her name is Dr. Beth Westy. She is a female hormone specialist. And Dr. Beth does these, they're called a Dutch test. So it's a dried urine test that is shipped to your house. And you take these urine samples and mail it back in. So up until the time that I had this Dutch test done, I wasn't getting a whole lot of, answers on why I was so exhausted from my doctor. I was, late 30s. She ran, a panel of tests. All my blood results came back fine. Took a look at my thyroid because of, what I was talking to her about with the exhaustion. Um, and things weren't totally out of whack with my thyroid. They were a little borderline, I would say. Um, and it wasn't to the point that she felt the need to put me on medication for my thyroid, but at the time she said, like, if this will help you, we can go that route. And about 2 weeks later is when I got my Dutch test results back. So the cool thing about the Dutch test is it really gives you a holistic perspective of some things that are going on in your body, in your hormones, and um, when Dr. Beth was going over all of these results with me on the phone, I just remember sobbing, just like really just a release of emotions because I finally felt that I got some answers. And I told her on the phone that day, like, I didn't know what was going on. I really just thought I had become lazy. And that was hard. That was hard to admit to someone. Um, that definitely was not anything that I've probably ever said about myself up until that point. I would have never put myself in the category of being lazy, but I didn't know what was going on. So that's why this episode is so important because I know that there are some of you out there that are listening to this that feel the same way. You are so exhausted each and every day. Like you wake up exhausted. That is how I was at that point. Like I was waking up just so exhausted, dragging myself out of bed when I was still in the corporate world. Didn't want to go there. I would say all the time, I just don't want to go to work. And I know that there are probably a lot of people that say that, but truly, it was a struggle to get out of bed. And it progressively got worse. So even where I thought like, oh, if I quit this high stress job, everything will just magically be better. And it wasn't because I was in the thick of burnout. The biggest thing that we have to remember when we're on our burnout recovery journey is that it took us years to get to that space, right? To do all of that harm essentially to our system. So if you are just that person that is dragging themselves out of bed, just waking up exhausted, even after a good night's sleep, like when I say good night, I mean like a lot of hours of sleep. If you're still waking up that exhausted, you struggle to get through the day, you have no energy on your day off to do anything. I want you to know that you're not lazy. Don't let those words cross your mind. Take the time where you might reflect on like why do I feel this bad? And let's start to do something about it. You can most definitely read a lot and try to do your burnout recovery journey on your own. But I'll tell you, when you work with someone who's been there, someone who studies this, someone who is not going to sugarcoat this, when you have that person by your side to support you on your journey, it makes it a hell of a lot easier. It could take your timeline from, a year, 18 months, 2 years of recovery time, and it could condense it because you've got that support. So if there's one thing that you do today after listening to this, pay attention to the people around you. Who else do you know that might be struggling with burnout? Maybe it's you, maybe it's not you, but I bet that you know someone that is going through this right now. And if so, feel free to send them this podcast. Send them this episode and let them know that in the show notes, there will be a link where they can connect with me. And I'm always here to chat with folks and help them start their burnout recovery journey as well as to support them. So I'm cheering for you. I hope that you have an amazing week. I hope that this episode has served you well. And I will catch you back here on the next episode. So, are you ready to start your own corporate detox journey? Well, if you are, make sure that you check out amandamcwhorter.net for different ways to work with me, as well as some freebies that could help you get started. If you're on social media, follow me at Amanda K. McWhorter on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram.